The lady of the house sunbathing. The nanny is kind enough to apply essential oils to her. The skillful massage technique. The lady of the house is overwhelmed. She turns and dives into the pool to cool off. But at this point she wouldn't have thought that this innocent, beautiful, sexy girl would be a permanent pain in her ass. The heroine, Ellen, is a mystery writer. She's an old lady, but she still has her charm. She has a husband who is very sweet to her. The family is happy as can be. However, this enviable life is soon shattered. One day Ellen was about to spar with her husband in the martial arts, but the man's inability to do so made him feel defeated. Although her husband kept explaining to her, Ellen didn't listen. She even suspected that her husband had had enough to eat, so she just ignored him. In the face of his wife's persistent pressure, the husband had to tell her the truth. It turned out that the company was in trouble. He was about to face a huge financial crisis. He was too exhausted. He couldn't be bothered to deal with such a situation. Ellen believed her husband's story. She was prepared to continue to write to earn money to help her husband solve his problems. But in order for him to be able to write, he was ready to find a nanny to look after the children. So at the suggestion of his best friend, he went to an agency. But with all the different kinds of nannies, Ellen didn't like any of them. Even her husband thought she was too picky. She was at her wit's end. A young girl came to apply for the job. At first sight, Ellen took a liking to her. May's sweet smile hit Ellen's heart right away. In between her phone calls, May was already involved with the two children. This convinced Alan that she was the right person for the job, so he immediately agreed to take her on. And so it was. May was recognized by her family for her excellent performance. But her best friend, who had seen a lot of men, could see the difference. She kindly reminded Alan, "Be careful with such a beautiful, sexy woman, and maybe one day, you'll end up with your husband." And just as her husband returned, and he's not afraid to make a pass at the sexy little beauty. In the face of this scene, and it made Alan start thinking about it. But the rest of the day changed his mind. In addition to taking care of the children, May was also very attentive to him. When he was off, she would always bring him a snack. Gradually Alan came to think of her as family. He took her shopping and bought her lots of nice clothes. One day Alan was out in the yard looking for inspiration. He saw May standing by the window changing her clothes. Instead of leaving, she sat down to admire her. The more she looked, the more fascinated she became. It was clear that the feeling was out of the ordinary. He told his girlfriend what he was thinking, but she didn't think so. She thinks he's immersed in the novel and hasn't come out. Unbeknownst to him, this was a recipe for trouble later on. This little nanny is too flirtatious. While the man was taking him to dinner, stretching out on purpose, the already short shirt, she can't hide the beauty of the garden anymore. The man opposite her gulps. The flirtatious atmosphere spreads between them. At home in the evening, he targeted his mistress again. When he sees Ellen in the shower, he would give her a full body massage. This makes Ellen feel smooth in a way she hasn't for a long time. And while he's sunbathing, he would also rub sunscreen on Ellen while he was sunbathing, even when they were playing together. The way she did it also made Alan fall in love with her. Over time, a different kind of affection developed between them. Alan would also pay extra attention to Xiao Mei. He would even have hallucinations. The relationship grows closer and closer. They were on the edge of taboo. But as the days went by, things took a turn for the worse. One day her husband and Mei went to drop off the children at school. But then they went to the restaurant for dinner. Xiao Mei had changed her usual behavior. She was very bold in her words and behavior. She made the man's heart beat faster, and he was on the edge of his seat. Lisa's best friend saw the scene. She told Alan about the incident. Ellen was not impressed. She thought she was being nosy. She even suspected that she was having thoughts about her husband. She was so angry that she had nothing to say to her. In the end, the sisters broke up. When they returned to the house, Ellen saw May cooking dinner. In a flash, he had forgotten about his girlfriend's words, but just as he was about to drift off to sleep, he was suddenly awakened by a gasp. Curious, Alan prepared to go downstairs to check, but what he saw before him was unbelievable. What was even stranger was that the look in May's eyes seemed to have a provocative edge to it. Have you ever seen a nanny like this? Not only does she relieve her mistress of her loneliness and bring pleasure to the man in the process, but that didn't last long. Instead, it was broken one silent night. One day Alan was awakened by the sound of a loud panting. He rushed downstairs to check on him, only to be confronted by an unpleasant scene between the nanny and her husband. Strangely enough, the nanny's eyes seemed to have a provocative look in them. For a moment, Alan fainted, but when he woke up again, something even more horrific happened. The agent called and told her there was no May. So where did this nanny come from? Why was she in her house? Alan felt very scared, so he remembered his best friend's warning and decided to talk to her. But when he arrived at his girlfriend's house, he found her already dead, and she was in the same state, exactly the same as in his own novel, both stabbed to death with scissors. She was so scared that she called the police. She couldn't calm down for a long time, but what surprised her even more was that the police found that she had been here the night before, the incident. Her fingerprints were also on the murder weapon. All the signs pointed to her being the murderer. Just when she was in a difficult position to defend herself, her husband arrived in time with her lawyer. He was able to get away with it, and that's when Alan decided that there must be something wrong with May. So he went to her hometown to find out what was going on. And God willing, He did. Alan found out everything from May's aunt. It turned out that May worked at the gym she frequented. She overheard Ellen talking to her best friend about finding a nanny. That's why she came to the house to apply for the job under false pretenses. At this point, Ellen realized that May was a dangerous person, so she called her husband and told him everything. At this moment, her husband was in the shower. Suddenly he heard a noise outside. When he walked out, she was already in front of him. Enraged, May was not willing to give up. The two of them then fought with each other. When Ellen returned home, when Ellen came home and saw that her husband was dying, he was at a loss for words. At that moment, May grabbed a knife and came at him again.
Me, you cunt.
A struggle ensued. The powerful young woman had Alan in her grip. Luckily, Alan reacted in time. He grabbed a vase of flowers and knocked May unconscious. He escaped unharmed. The husband's life was saved when he was rescued. The family then went back to the happy life they once had.